A story of betrayal and revenge. My name is Mary. And 3 years ago, I realized, even after 20 years of marriage, you can suddenly wake up in someone else's life. I lived with John for 20 years. We met at work, got married in our 30s, raised 2 children. Our life seemed solid and predictable. Not perfect, but real. I believed that was enough. The beginning of the end. It all started with small things. John started staying late. Often. Without explanations. A different cologne appeared. New shirts. And a phone he never let out of his hands. Suddenly, at 50, he joined a gym, started taking care of himself like never before. I remember the first time I noticed the cologne. It was a Tuesday morning, and he was getting ready for work. The scent was sharp, modern, nothing like the classic aftershave he'd worn for years. When I asked him about it, he shrugged. Tom at the office recommended it, he said, not meeting my eyes. Said it was time to update my image. Tom. His colleague who was 10 years younger and always talking about personal branding and professional presence. It made sense. But something in my stomach twisted. Then came the gym membership. John, who had always said he got enough exercise mowing the lawn and playing with the kids, suddenly became obsessed with fitness. 3 times a week turned into 5. He bought new workout clothes, expensive running shoes, started talking about his fitness journey at dinner. It's about health, he'd say when I raised an eyebrow. We're not getting any younger, Mary. I want to be around for the grandkids someday. It sounded reasonable. Noble, even. But there was something in his voice, something eager and secretive that hadn't been there before. My friend said to me, sometimes the truth doesn't scream. It just stands silently nearby. I didn't want to see it. Susan had been my friend since college. We'd gone through everything together, first jobs, weddings, childbirth, all of it. She knew me better than anyone, maybe even better than John did at that point. We were having coffee one Saturday morning at our favorite cafe, the one with the oversized armchairs and the smell of fresh-baked croissants. I was telling her about John's new habits, trying to make it sound funny, making jokes about his midlife crisis. She didn't laugh. Mary, she said, setting down her cup carefully. How long has this been going on? What do you mean? The gym thing? Maybe 3 months, all of it. The changes. The distance. I opened my mouth to defend him, to explain it away, but the words stuck in my throat. Because when I actually thought about it, really thought about it, the changes had started almost 6 months ago. Maybe longer. It had been so gradual that I hadn't wanted to add it all up. Men don't just suddenly reinvent themselves at 50, Susan said gently. Not unless they're trying to impress someone. He's not, I started, but she reached across the table and took my hand. I hope I'm wrong, she said. I really do. But Mary, promise me you'll pay attention. Really pay attention. I promised. But deep down, I still didn't believe it could be true. The discovery. That Tuesday, I decided to surprise him. I made his favorite chicken pot pie and drove to the office. The office was empty. The secretary was nervous. Mr. Thompson took the day off. Tuesday. Without telling me. I stood in that sterile office hallway with its fluorescent lights and generic art on the walls, holding a still warm pie in my hands, and felt something crack inside me. 20 years of marriage, and he couldn't even tell me he was taking a day off. The secretary, a young woman named Emily who'd always been friendly to me, looked genuinely distressed. Her eyes kept darting away from mine. "I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, Mrs. Thompson," she said, but her voice was too high, too forced. "I'm sure there is," I replied, somehow keeping my voice steady. "Thank you, Emily." I walked back to my car on autopilot. The pie sat in the passenger seat, still warm, still perfect, and completely pointless. I started the engine and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Where was he? When I returned home, there was a red convertible parked by our house. I entered quietly, without words. And I heard laughter. His. And a woman's. From our bedroom. I stood in the entryway of my own home, the home we'd bought 15 years ago, the home where we'd raised our children, where we'd celebrated Christmases and birthdays and anniversaries, and I heard my husband laughing with another woman in our bed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. For a long moment, I simply stood there, the pie still in my hands, listening to sounds that were destroying my life. At that moment, I didn't break down. I detached. As if I looked at my life from the outside. It's strange, the way your mind protects you. I felt like I was watching a movie, like this was happening to someone else. There was no rush of emotion, no screaming or crying. Just a cold, clear understanding that everything I thought I knew had been a lie. I set the pie down on the hall table, carefully, as if it mattered. Then I walked up the stairs, each step measured and deliberate. The bedroom door was half open. She was younger. 15 years younger than me. Confident. Her name was Lisa. His business partner. They didn't hear me at first. She was sitting on the edge of our bed in a silk robe, my silk robe, I realized with a distant sense of violation, and John was standing by the window, still pulling on his shirt. They were both laughing about something, intimate and easy, like they'd done this 100 times before. Maybe they had. I knocked on the doorframe. Once. Sharply. The laughter died instantly. John spun around, and the color drained from his face. Lisa's eyes went wide, but I noticed she didn't look particularly ashamed. Just surprised. Caught. "Mary," John stuttered, his voice strangled. I didn't scream. I said, "You have 30 minutes to get out of my house." And to John, "We'll talk later." My voice was calm. Too calm. It scared even me. The aftermath. He begged. Said he'd stumbled. That it meant nothing. That he was going through a midlife crisis. The kids asked me to forgive him. Be wise, Mom. Don't destroy the family. But for the first time, I didn't choose wisdom. I chose myself. That night, after Lisa had hurried out with her clothes bundled in her arms, after John had packed her bag with shaking hands and driven away to a hotel, I sat alone in our living room in the dark. The kids were both at college, our daughter Rachel was in her senior year, and our son David was a sophomore. I'd have to call them. Tell them. Destroy the illusion of their stable, happy family. But first, I just sat. I didn't cry. Not yet. I was still in that strange, detached state, like I was floating above my own life. I kept replaying moments in my head, trying to figure out when it had started. When had I lost him? Or had I ever really had him at all? Around midnight, my phone started buzzing. John. Calling, texting, calling again. I turned it off. The next morning, Susan came over. I sent her a single text, "You were right." She arrived within 20 minutes, still in her pajamas under her coat, carrying a bag of bagels and a determination to see me through this. "Tell me everything," she said, wrapping me in a hug. So I did. And as I spoke, as I put the whole nightmare into words, the detachment finally broke. I cried for 3 hours straight while Susan held me and made me tea and let me say all the ugly, angry, heartbroken things I needed to say. "He's been calling," I finally said, showing her my phone with its 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. "What does he want?" "Forgiveness. A second chance. To explain." Susan's face hardened. "Do you want to hear his explanation?" I thought about it. Did I? Would knowing why make it hurt less? Would understanding his reasons change what he'd done? "No," I said, and felt a strange sense of relief. "I don't think I do." When I finally called Rachel and David, their reactions were predictable. Rachel was furious at her father. David tried to be the mediator, suggesting counseling, asking if maybe we could work through it. 20 years, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "That has to count for something." "It does count," I told him gently. "It counts for a lot." "But David, he broke something that can't be fixed. I hope you never have to understand that, but I need you to respect it." The divorce proceedings lasted 6 months. John was confident he would win. After all, he was the one who earned more. He was the one who'd built a career. But he forgot, I'd always been attentive. Documents. Receipts. Truth. It turned out that I'd invested my inheritance in the down payment for the house. That I'd paid for most of the children's expenses while he was developing the business. My lawyer, Robert, was methodical and brilliant. He was 52, divorced himself, and had a quiet intensity that made me feel safe for the first time in months. "They always forget," he said during our first meeting, "that marriage is a partnership. And in a partnership, everything counts. The money you earn, yes, but also the sacrifices you make, the opportunities you give up, the inheritance you invest in the shared dream." He built the case carefully. Bank statements going back 20 years. Proof of my father's money funding our first home. Records of my salary going toward the children's private school tuition, their music lessons, their sports equipment, while John's income went into his retirement accounts and his business investments. "He wanted you to be the primary caregiver," Robert explained, "so he could focus on his career. That was a choice you made together. Now he has to honor that choice." The house stayed with me. Half of his savings, too. A good portion of his future pension, also mine. John couldn't believe it. He'd walked into the proceedings confident, almost smug, certain that his career success would speak for itself. When the judge ruled in my favor on nearly every point, he looked like someone had physically struck him. His lawyer tried to argue. John tried to negotiate. But the evidence was overwhelming. I had been not just a wife, but an investor, a partner, a co-builder of everything we'd had. And the law recognized that. He moved into a small apartment. And Lisa left him after 4 months, along with the money. Her interest disappeared too. It turned out she needed a successful man with status, not a divorced 50-year-old with debts to his lawyer. I heard about it through mutual friends. Apparently, Lisa had thought she was getting the whole package, the successful businessman, the nice house, the comfortable lifestyle. When she realized that John was now living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment, driving a 5-year-old sedan, and eating frozen dinners, she suddenly remembered she had other options. She left him with a text message. Didn't even have the decency to do it in person. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction at that. Another part, a surprisingly large part, just felt sorry for him. He'd blown up his entire life for someone who didn't even care enough to say goodbye to his face. 3 years later. 3 years have passed. I sold the house where I cried and bought a cozy apartment downtown. I travel. I paint. I took photography courses, always dreamed of it. I'm learning to live slowly and honestly. The apartment is smaller than the house, but it's mine in a way the house never was. Every piece of furniture, every painting on the wall, every book on the shelf, I chose it. Not we. Just me. And there's a freedom in that I never expected. I took my first solo trip 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Paris. I always wanted to go, but John had never been interested. Too touristy, he'd say. Too expensive. Maybe someday. Someday never came when I was waiting for him. But when I went alone, wandering through the Musée d'Orsay, sitting in cafes watching people pass by, walking along the Seine at sunset, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. I took hundreds of photos. Mostly bad ones at first. I had no idea what I was doing. But when I came back, I signed up for a photography class at the local community college. Tuesday evenings, a group of us would meet in a studio, learning about light and composition and telling stories with images. That's where I discovered I had an eye for portraits. Something about capturing the truth in people's faces, the unguarded moments, fascinated me. I started doing free photo sessions for friends, then friends of friends. Nothing professional, just practice. But it felt good to create something, to have a skill that was entirely my own. Susan and I took a trip to Italy last spring. We rented a car and drove through Tuscany, staying in small villages, eating too much pasta, laughing until our sides hurt. She took a photo of me in Florence, standing on the Ponte Vecchio at golden hour, and when I looked at it later, I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy. When had that happened? Our kids, now 22 and 19, understand now why I made that choice. They see me happy, for the first time in many years. Rachel graduated college last year with honors. At her graduation dinner, she pulled me aside. "Mom," she said, "I need to tell you something. When you first told me about Dad, I was so angry at you. I thought you were being selfish, that you should try harder, that marriage was about compromise." "I know," I said gently. "It's okay." "No, let me finish. I was wrong. I've been watching you these past 3 years, and I've been watching Dad, and I get it now. You didn't give up on your marriage. He did. You just refused to pretend it didn't happen. And I'm proud of you for that." I cried then. Happy tears. David took longer to come around. He's more like his father, loyal, stubborn, always wanting to fix things. But last month, he came to visit my apartment for the first time. He walked around slowly, taking in the art on the walls, some mine, some from local artists I'd met, the bookshelves filled with travel guides and photography books, the small balcony with its herb garden. "You did all this yourself?" he asked. "I did." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "It looks like you, Mom. Actually looks like you." The house never did. Sometimes my lawyer, Robert, invites me to dinner. He's 52, divorced. We don't promise each other anything. We just laugh. We talk about books, about travel. And that's enough. Robert asked me out about a year after my divorce was finalized. Nothing dramatic, we'd just finished dealing with some paperwork related to John's pension, and as I was leaving his office, he said, "Would you like to get coffee sometime? Not as your lawyer. Just as Robert." I said yes. We've been on maybe 20 dates since then. Sometimes dinner, sometimes a movie, once a day trip to a museum in the next state. It's easy with him. There's no pressure, no expectations. He understands what it's like to have a marriage fall apart, to rebuild from the ruins of what you thought your life would be. We talk about real things, about our kids, our mistakes, our fears, our dreams for whatever comes next. And we laugh. God, we laugh. I've forgotten how good it feels to laugh with someone who actually listens to the words behind the jokes. I don't know if it will become something more. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. For now, it's exactly what I need: companionship without commitment, affection without anxiety. A reminder that there are good people in the world, people who value honesty and kindness and showing up. And John? He lives alone. He tried to find someone new, but it turned out that women his age want real relationships, not another round of playing at youth. I ran into him a few months ago at the grocery store. It was awkward, both of us standing there in the produce section, trying to figure out what to say. He looked older. Tired. There were deep lines around his eyes that I didn't remember, and his hair had gone almost completely gray. "Mary," he said. "You look good." "Thank you." Silence. Somewhere in the background, a child was singing off-key, and a PA system announced a sale on organic apples. "I heard Rachel graduated," he said finally. "She didn't invite me to the ceremony." She was hurt, John. You chose not to show up for 2 years' worth of her life. She's not obligated to invite you to celebrate her success. He flinched. "I made mistakes." "Yes. You did. I know you won't believe this, but Lisa was a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake. I threw away everything that mattered for something that meant nothing." I looked at him for a long moment. There was a time when seeing him hurt like this would have broken me. When I would have wanted to comfort him, to tell him it was okay, that we could find a way through it. But that time had passed. "I hope you figure things out, John," I said. "I really do. But I can't help you with that. Not anymore." I walked away, and for the first time since I'd seen him with Lisa, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no lingering love. Just nothing. And that, I realized, was how I knew I was truly free. The truth about revenge. I understood the main thing: the best revenge isn't anger. Nor is it pain. The best revenge is happiness. When the person who betrayed you sees that without them, you've become stronger, calmer, and more alive, that hurts more than any words. It took me a long time to understand this. At first, in those early days after I discovered the betrayal, I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to feel the pain he'd caused me, multiplied and reflected back at him. I fantasized about dramatic confrontations, about exposing him to everyone we knew, about making sure his life was as miserable as he'd made mine. But somewhere in the process of rebuilding my life, of rediscovering who I was outside of being John's wife, I realized something: his suffering wouldn't heal me. It wouldn't give me back the years I'd lost or erase the hurt he'd caused. All it would do was keep me tied to him, keep me focused on him, keep me living in the shadow of what he'd done. So I chose something different. I chose to live well. Every time I took a trip he'd never wanted to take, every time I tried something new he'd dismissed, Every time I made a choice based solely on what I wanted, that was my revenge. Not because I was trying to hurt him, but because I was trying to heal myself. And the beautiful, unexpected side effect was that it worked. My happiness, my growth, my freedom, that became the mirror that showed him everything he'd lost. Not because I was trying to show him. Simply because it was true. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end. It's a door. One that you finally dare to open. I think about that Tuesday 3 years ago, standing in my hallway with a chicken pot pie in my hands, hearing laughter from my bedroom. That was the door. It had actually opened for me, even though I didn't realize it at the time. I could have closed it. I could have pretended I didn't hear what I heard, didn't see what I saw. I could have gone into couples counseling and tried to work through it and spent another 10 or 20 years wondering if he was really where he said he was, if the changes in him were real or just better concealment. Many women do. Many women choose to stay, and I don't judge them for it. Everyone's path is different, everyone's pain is their own, and everyone's threshold for what they can accept is unique to them. But for me, that door had to stay open. Walking through it was the hardest thing I've ever done, harder than childbirth, harder than losing my father, harder than any of the other challenges life had thrown at me. Because walking through that door meant accepting that the life I'd built, the future I'd imagined, the person I'd thought I'd grow old with, all of it was gone. But on the other side of that door was me. The real me, not the me I'd contorted myself into being to fit into John's life, to support his dreams, to be the wife he needed me to be. Just me, raw and real and free to become whoever I wanted to be. And that, I've learned, is worth everything. My name is Mary. I'm 50 years old. 3 years ago, my husband of 20 years betrayed me, and my life as I knew it ended. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes endings are just beginnings in disguise. And sometimes the person you need to save isn't the marriage. It's yourself.